Okay, guys, welcome back to the Mindset Effect. Today we're going to be talking about self-perception. I think you guys will find this super interesting. And so, I guess the first one we're going to hit home is like your self-perception becomes your reality. And like I say this with experience in my own life and just seeing it firsthand in friends and like people that I know. And so, like, so let's talk about Andrew. So, like when I first met Andrew, like, it was so clear that like his self perception of himself is like, you know, I'm gonna be super successful in the future, and like I don't give a shit about what other people think about me. And so, like, it's like that sort of self perception is like super positive because like he's not like a billionaire yet, but like he knows that he will become a billionaire. So, like, that's the whole self perception thing. So, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important, just for like self-happiness to have like a clear vision of who you want to be, and to really make sure that you're staying true to that and consistent with that. And we've talked about this before, I think, but it's like, there's a big difference between who you want to be and who you are. And so I think it's really important to make sure that you know what you want and that you're okay with dealing with the consequences of whatever that thing is. A lot of people talk about wanting to be a billionaire, but the amount of work that you're gonna have to put in, the amount of value you're gonna have to provide to get to that level, there are gonna be a lot of sacrifices you're gonna have to make along the way. So it's like, if you're okay with making those sacrifices, go for it. Go for that goal and act like you want to be that. But if not, make sure that you aren't going for things, or like setting out goals that you don't actually want. Because I think that can be a little bit harmful. If you're like, I'm gonna be a billionaire, and then like 10 years down the road, you're like, just kidding. I don't want to be
Yeah,
as
yeah.
much.
So on the topic of wealth, right? So like I said earlier, your self perception can't even talk, but self perception becomes reality, and so it's so true. Like self perception is different from what you want, right? A lot of people they want to be rich, but their self perception is still I am middle class or like I'm still earning like $60,000 a year. Like they're never going to break out of that. So that's what they want. So being rich is what they want, but their self perception is still not there yet. And like a lot of people say they want to get okay, yeah. So I think the first step that you have to do is like be willing to see things in a bigger perspective, and only by doing so can you open yourself up to like the bigger opportunities, right? Because there's this good like metaphor called the frog in the well. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, so it's like basically like it's a proverb like that depicts a frog in a well, right? And like all the frog can see is the sky, and that's his worldview,
Love
right?
it.
Like he only
Hmm.
thinks there's a sky, but like we as humans we're outside the well, and so we know there's not only a sky, there's like heaven, well not heavens, but like there's space and other planets, right? Like that's our worldview, and basically the whole idea is like a lot of people are like frogs in the well, like they don't want to open their minds and be more open and stuff, and so that's the first step. You got to you got to be willing to see things in a bigger picture. And like when I think about myself, like I may have had opportunities in my life to have like bigger breakthroughs, and because I was looking at it through a narrow scope, um, like because I was thinking about like how can I become a successful software engineer? Like I'm not thinking how do I make billions, right? But that's what I want to be thinking because I want to be a billionaire in the future. And but thankfully my self-perception is different now, and I'm not limited by what I currently am, but rather what I can be. Like your potential is like what really defines your self-perception.
Hmm. I agree. I actually had a really good point, and now I'm kind of blanking on what it was. Hmm. But yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so I know, I remember what it is. So I think branding ties into this a lot. So, the way you act is going to be the way that people will perceive you. And so I think this is another really big part is you will attract people who are on the same mission, and they will be able to help you. And so like, Kevin and I, we bonded instantly when we met each other because we were both kind of going down this path already.
Wait, really?
Um,
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think you didn't really realize it, but I think it was probably in the back of your mind of like, I want to be a little bit better. And so like maybe you
Probably.
didn't start out that way, but when we met, you kind of realized like, oh, this is actually more of what I want to be. And so I think it helped you switch. And so like I think it's valuable to to really try to act exactly how you want to be in the future. And like the whole fake it till you make it idea has merits in this case, because I think if you act, it's like if you want to be an anomaly, you have to act like one. If you want to be an anomaly, if you can act like it, people will see you like it, and it'll open up a lot of opportunities for you. Because like if you act like you're just some nobody who's a complete noob who knows nothing, then people are just going to look down on you and you won't get as many opportunities. And even if you don't know entirely what you're doing, I think you should come at everything with a learner's mindset. But I think you should also come at things with an air of confidence. Like that has been something that's been so big for me. And I want to be somebody who walks into a room and commands an air of confidence. Like you can tell I'm very confident, but I don't put other people down. I want to help make other people confident and like help them, figure out what they want to do and go for that. And so it's like that's the kind of brand that I want to stay consistent with. And I think by doing that, I find other people that are like that, who maybe are farther along on my path, who can actually help, support me and push me further too.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. And like self-perception, right? Like I think like I think we both had parents, like we talked to them about like being a millionaire or billionaire, and they just like shrug it off. They're just like,
God, yeah.
they're like, do you know how many people can be like that? Only like
Mhm.
1% of people in the world, or like not even 1%, like 0.00001% of people. And like when you think of that, like so when you think like that, like you will never become uber rich. Like it's
Mhm.
impossible to ever get where you want to be thinking like that. And so basically what I'm trying to say is like you will never see the opportunities to become rich unless you can open your mind and think
Yeah.
that you can become rich.
Yeah, I think so many people. This is why I'm such a big advocate for getting rid of categories. It's like in literally every aspect. It's like we categorize ourselves, and then we feel like we have to fit into these boxes, and it drives me up the wall because all of us are so adaptable. You can change your mind on a dime and move in a different direction and pivot and try new things. And so it's like I don't understand the like, oh, put yourself in a category thing, because like you can always move out of it. And I think knowing kind of who you want to be will really allow you to, move fluidly through boxes, to be like, I can fit in like 10 different categories to be that kind of person that I want to end up being. And again, you can change who you want to be. Like that's something that'll most likely happen for all of us is like changing the person that we think we want to be. And I think you learn that as you continue moving forward. But if you're never looking to continue learning about like the person that you would want to be, you might meet somebody and you're like, wow, I actually love this aspect of them. I want to incorporate this more into who I am. And so I think you can always change like the kind of person that you want to be. And again, it's like you've got to act like that person. That'll really help you with that, changing the perception of things.
Yeah, you should always be looking to improve yourself. Talk about that later. But like I was gonna, you fucking interrupted me earlier. I
Sorry.
was gonna continue, but like, so granted, right? Like if you have a certain range of life experiences, and this is like on the topic of like potential, right? Like how like this is like the distinction between like what you want and like what you're actually capable of. So like if you have a certain range of life experiences or like you start making more money, like say you're making thousands a year before, and then like now you're making tens of thousands a year, right? That's a huge shift. And that's not a shift of mindset, right? That's a shift of experience. Because like at that point, like that's for sure going to change your perception, right? Because before, if you're thinking thousands and you start earning tens of thousands, that's going to change your perception. That's like a physical change. So like there's changes to your self perception through like reality and through like actually visualizing and like belief. And so, but here's the thing: like if you have the confidence in your own abilities that you can get to the level where you want to be, like why not just go through that process?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the idea that like you like find what you look for is super meritable. I've also mentioned this. It's like, if I tell you to look for a yellow box in a room, like you're stuck in a room and I'm like, find a yellow box, you'll find the yellow box. But then if I'm like, okay, did you see a red dot anywhere? You're gonna be like, well, I wasn't looking for a red dot, so I didn't notice. And it's the same thing. If you're somebody who
Yeah.
like in your mind, you're looking for opportunities all the time, you'll find there's a lot more. It's the same as like this COVID stuff. There are people who can only see the negative aspects, and there are people who can only see the positives. And in fact, like I talked about, creating a drive-in movie theater. There are people that are doing movie theaters like on the water, where they're like renting out boats, and people can go watch movies on the water. And so it's like, you come up with all sorts of ideas. I think you just have to be the kind of person who's looking for these. And I think that has so much to do with perception. Like, how do you view the glass? Do you view it as, half full or half empty? And I think that decides a lot of different decisions in your life.
True, true. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say though, like, because the question I was like asking was like, like if you want to become a billionaire, why do you have to go through all these different steps, right? Because if you want to be a billionaire, you earn thousands a year, tens of thousands a year, hundreds of thousands, and then millions a year, right? Like, why do you have to go through all those steps?
Well, I mean, it's building up to get to
Yeah,
something.
right. Like it's like self-perception, right? Like
Yeah.
yourself needs to grow into that perception before it's actually ready to be comfortable with all those bigger things. That's what I'm trying to
Hmm.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Well,
see
you
that.
can,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is you can prepare your mind for those bigger things if you start thinking like that, but experiencing it, the gradual way. But like your mind is already there.
Hmm.
It's like it's super abstract, but
Yeah, I mean, it's super representative of just all of this. It's like you're always building up to something. And again, it's like you might come across experiences that, tell you that you don't want to be whatever. You maybe don't care as much about being a billionaire. You don't care as much about being like that specific person that you thought you were going to be. And I think remaining like flexible about the person that you can be in the end is super, super valuable. Because so many people are just set on like, this is who I want to be. I'm not changing it, and then they get to that point and the world's already moved on and it's maybe not as much of a position that you'd want to be in. And so like I think you have to be able to change with the times. And I think this goes into a lot of just confidence in general. So many people aren't confident because they don't know who they are. This is actually a great exercise. If I talk about like Nike and if I ask somebody, what does Nike stand for? People can give the tagline, be like, oh, they stand for this. But it's, if I ask you, like, what do you stand for? It's most people don't have an answer. They're like, that's a really good question. Like, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. And so I think like finding these points that you want to hammer on, these things that you want to advocate for, like the speaking points that you want to always represent you. I think that's super valuable. And so
that's
like
such a
Gary
good
Vee
point.
has done that.
Such a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gary Vee has done a fantastic job of that, of like the grind culture and like marketing. When you hear these terms, like you think of him, and they're like other people like Tony Robbins. Like you hear certain topics and you think of these individuals because they've immersed themselves so much in these topics and built their brands around these. That's like all you can think about when you hear that when you hear those topics. And so I think that's really valuable also.
I don't know what the fuck that tangent was, but I think the main point you're trying to say is like you got to know your own value. Know your own value helps a lot. And
Well,
so
yeah, and I think how you perceive things, that was like the point of the tangent, is how you see things, is going to lead to you seeing yourself as more than just like oh, I have no meaning, I'm not important, because it'll help
for
you
sure.
to actually see that you make a difference on things.
Yeah. What's your opinion on self perception in relationships?
I think it's super important. That also goes into the point that I was talking about. Is like I think you need to have a decent idea of who you are, um, because they always talk about like if you don't love yourself, you can't really love anyone else, and I think that's super true. And I think how you perceive yourself is a major player in that.
Yeah, give me like an example. So like before your breakup, after your breakup, like how did your self perception change?
Yeah. Before I didn't really stand for anything. I didn't really have any meaning. It was, I don't know. I was like one of those typical people who's just like I'm gonna go through life. I'm gonna do whatever. I might make a decent living being a programmer or whatever. But there was nothing I was like waking up every day being like, I'm gonna go and do this. I'm gonna make this change in the world. Actually have a purpose. And then after, it was like me building myself back up, realizing that I actually could bring myself out of a hole. So that helped me gain confidence. And there's so much more respect for myself at this point. Now I can just look back at things and be like, I didn't respect me and I didn't respect her at all during certain situations. Like I remember, obviously I deleted most of those texts a long time ago, but I have two messaging apps, and so they didn't delete on one of them. And I read through a couple of them a while ago, and I was just like, wow, I was super immature. Like reading through some of these, I was like, wow, this is really, really bad. And so I think like being able to see who you were, you kind of get to see like how you're improving. But I think it shows you like, wow, I didn't love myself, and that made me act out in certain ways. People, especially in relationships, get jealous all the time. I think if you truly love yourself, you aren't as worried about your significant other like going
Yeah,
off and hanging
you
out with
shouldn't care
people.
too much about a relationship. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of people they get relationships wrong. like what
I
you want to
agree.
do is like you shouldn't be like you should like show not tell, right? Like if
I
you want
agree.
to do something, literally tell her I'm gonna be going here. Like, do you want to come with me? Like that's it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
it's
yeah.
all that
Yeah.
like you gotta be leading. I think that's
Yeah. And I
like
think you
you
have
shouldn't be
to.
needy. I think a lot of guys are just too needy in relationships, and it causes
Mhm.
a lot of negative self perception.
I 100% agree, and I think so many people just aren't confident enough in themselves to actually communicate and have hard conversations, and so things go unspoken about, and then they build up to the point where it's just like a
Yeah.
breakup
See,
when
like
the
I think the biggest point here is like they don't know their own value, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
dude, like so for example, like back then, like there was a certain type of girl like that I had like huge insecurities about for the longest time. And I'm sure like I feel like maybe you might have. I know a lot of guys do, but like, like the type of girl that's like super attractive and also super rich, right? Like those type that is like that's like the perfect girl I'm telling you. But like or like the amount of money that you like so like basically like the amount of money that I was aiming to make in the future like didn't even matter to that type of girl. Right. Like
Yeah.
and so like my previous perception of making hundreds of thousands as a software engineer like held me back in this case, right? Like because like if you think about it, like if a girl's a multimillionaire and you're making six figures, like that six figures is just a drop in the bucket for her. Like
Mhm.
so like the things that I'm ambitious about like don't actually mean anything to her. And like yeah,
Well,
causes
this
a
is
lot of
actually
insecurities. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah, this is actually a really interesting point on just self-perception in general and like how mine personally has changed. I talked about being a billionaire a lot, like a few months ago. I think more and more I'm realizing I don't actually care too much about money or even like too much recognition. I just want to be able to go to bed at night knowing that I significantly impacted the future of like of humanity. Like I want to create things that massively change the trajectory. It's like look at Elon Musk. Humanity will never be the same because he lived. And like I am very focused on having that kind of impact. And so it's like for me, it's no longer about money. And so like it's just an example of like how you pivot. But I think you have to. I think it's an important thing to be confident enough to have that conversation with yourself as well to like be able to pivot without being embarrassed about it too.
Interesting. I still care about money a lot. I think money is like super useful.
I want to
But
be rich, but I think to me, there's not much of a difference between 200 million and like 400 million. It's like if you're
yeah,
that
yeah,
rich, it just
yeah.
like doesn't even matter at that point. But I do want to be very, very well off.
Yeah, it's just like I see all these like you see all these successful people, right? And like you ask yourself like what did they do differently from me? Like are
Hmm.
they smarter than me? Are they like more capable? But like and like you think about it and then like I'm just like dude, I'm like more capable than some of these people and I'm smarter. Like what
Hmm.
is stopping me from getting to their level of success? And like if
Hmm.
you really think about it, it's just the action. It's like what they've
Exactly.
done, right? They were willing to take the risks. They were willing to do stuff that you aren't willing to do.
Hmm.
So their
Well,
own
and
self-perception
it's
is
yeah, and this is also something, I beat this drum all the time, but it's, people who are wealthy or monetarily successful 100% got there because they're providing value to others. So the more impact that I, for example, create, the more money I will make. That's just going to come. And it's something that people don't explicitly explain. And so it's something I never really realized. But it's like, the more value that you are providing to others, the more money you will make. That's just how this works. And so I
Mhm.
think people need to focus less on just like making money in general and more on just how do you provide massive value to scale. Like that is what will make you very, very wealthy.
interesting. Interesting. Yeah, pretty interesting. Some of the psychology of like self-perception. Because I think like um so I think like what happens is like when we do an action that's not in line with who we are, at the moment, like at that moment, like at the present moment
Actually,
of
yeah,
who
it's
we
good.
are, right? Like we have to either so there's like two options. Like you can either forget about it or you can just like you can choose to alter your current self-perception in line of that new perception, right?
Hmm.
And I think the sad thing is like most people they encounter a lot of these situations where like they're doing something good for their future, but it's not in line with who they are at the present, and they just totally forget. They just ignore it, right? Like, and like the example I'm pointing back to is like wealth, right? Like, people read these books. Well, like, you can talk, you can talk.
Yeah, well, like I think you're 100% right, and this is like such a good point. This kind of plays into what I talk about with people who play excessive amounts of video games or who get really hardcore into drugs or alcohol, it's like you have a perception of like who you think you are and who you think you want to be, but it doesn't line up. So I've had this conversation with Presence within the last day. I've had like multiple 20-hour work days this week, and like for most people that would just be
What?
ridiculous. Yeah, it's been like I've actually done so much this week. It's kind of crazy, but like I've had like 2 to 4 hours of sleep almost every day this week, and it's so weird because I've been more energized and
Don't
happy
don't
this
emulate
week.
him. Don't
Yeah, no,
emulate him.
don't
You're
do
gonna
that. But
die at that point.
yeah, no, but it's been super weird because I've been more energized and happy this week from working insanely hard, and I think it's because it fits who I want to be. And it fits like who I actually am. And so I'm happier because I notice like if I ever play a video game, or like break some of my habits or something, like I am instantly less happy and I'm frustrated because I didn't hold up to my values. And I think that, you can always tell if you're not aligned with the values that you have. And so many people aren't aligned with their values. And I think that's what leads to depression, or one of the many factors that leads to depression is, you feel like you're worthless because you're not living up to like the values that you have set. And so I think like making sure that you're taking action on what fulfills you and gives you meaning, that is so important to like being happy in life. And I think
It's
this
also
is why it's like important to work on something. It's like I don't ever imagine a society where humans don't work, because it'd be so depressing because you wouldn't have any purpose.
it's also like super motivating too, right? Like you're working 20 hours a day, bro. It's insane. But like, I mean, there's no way you're working 20 hours a day, but like you're up 20 hours a day,
I
basically.
well, no, I did multiple
That's
days this
bullshit.
week.
No one works 20 hours a day. Like
I
you can
literally
you
did.
can work 20 hours, but like it's not 20 efficient hours. That's what I'm saying. But
I think it
anyway,
was
okay,
pretty
let's
efficient.
wait, fuck you. But basically like it's super motivating too when you're doing all this shit and like you actually see yourself improving, right? Because like
Hmm.
I've noticed for myself, like whenever I step into a new level when it comes to like coding and like business and life in general, like I've all like for me, like I fit into quite nicely. And like what that tells me is like this isn't my limit. I can always go further, right? I can keep going further. It's not my peak. And on this note, like like I'm actually thinking like maybe I'm not working hard enough. Like maybe I'm not stepping up as much as I can because of, like it's clearly not my limit. I can do better. So yeah, just some thought. Just some
Yeah,
thought.
and also I think it's like pushing. This is kind of unrelated, but I think like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is also something that is super rewarding. Because like I feel like for me, getting 8 hours of sleep is just super comfortable, and I feel like I get lazy if I do that. And so I think like keeping myself on my toes and like pushing myself a little bit harder,
Well, okay,
as
that's
much as
different. Sleeping is like it's
yes,
comfortable, but it's also like necessary if you like for
yes,
generation. So
yeah, yes, but I do think it kind of helps a little bit. Like even if it's not sleep related, even if it's just like working out or something, like making sure you push yourself out of your comfort zone, I think that'll help you stay aligned with kind of who you want to be and whatever it is that you're trying to be, whether or not that's like work related or if it's like being the best father or being a good speaker or whatever it is.
for sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah. Dude, we have like almost reaching our time limit, but yeah. So let's talk about action. Like, what can people do to actually take action on their self perception? And like, I'm gonna talk first because I think like it's super simple. Like if you believe you're ready for the next level, I think you should just go straight for it. And like if you believe you have the skills necessary to become a billionaire, just an example, start thinking like one and start acting like one. There's no
Yeah.
need, because like I think a lot of people they're like I can't become a billionaire yet, so I'm gonna think like a millionaire. But like there's no need to go through all those intermediate steps, like adjusting your mindset and stuff. Like if you're ready, just go for it, and you're gonna notice the dramatic benefits.
Hmm.
Do not like
Yeah.
adopt a more realistic approach, a more realistic goal.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's like kind of like Grant Cardone. I'm borrowing his big thing, but it's like 10x whatever you think you can do. If you're really results and goal driven and oriented, like go after whatever you think you can, like whatever you think you can't achieve. Like if you think you can maybe get to like 10 million this by the end of this year, like try to go to 100 million. It's like it's not about hitting the goal. It's never about hitting the goal. It's about improving. And so even if you miss the moon, like you land among the stars. It's like that's the whole point of this, is like
And you
improving as
die.
a person. Well, hopefully not, but but yeah. So it's like, I think pushing yourself beyond your bounds, and again, whatever it is that you are trying to do. If you're running, run more. If you're working out, lift more. It's like study more, work more. It's like whatever it is that you want to be better at. It's like you've got to really push
Yes,
yourself.
and I think it's not just like keep doing more, to keep doing more, keep doing more. It's like you got to be smart about it, be
Yeah.
efficient about it. Like especially work. I don't like, you always say like keep working, like push yourself every time you work out. It's not a smart idea. Like you don't want to push yourself to the max every time you work out. You're gonna be sore as fuck the next day. Like there's no way you're gonna like be able to do as many reps. So like it depends on what you're doing, and I think making a smart plan about like what to actually do, because this is like taking risks. Like you shouldn't take every risk. You should take calculated risks, right? Like you shouldn't take a risk where you're gonna lose everything if you fail, right? Like so funny. Like when you start a business, take risks with other investors' money. That's where you take risks.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends, obviously, and that gets into a whole lot of like equity stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like I think you just have to figure out for yourself like who it is that you want to be. And I think like meeting a diverse group of people with different like mindsets, that really helps, because you might not think that there are people out there that act, I don't know, a certain way. It might never cross your mind, and then you meet somebody like that, and you're like, I actually really love their philosophy, and I might borrow bits of that. And I think like that's super important. It's like based on the people you meet, that can really change your vision of like who you want to be in the future.
Instead of thinking who am I to be doing something that someone on my level should be doing, like you should start thinking, who am I not to do this big thing? Who am I not to do something huge, right? Because like I said earlier, like a lot of successful people are just people who have the courage to try something and take action, not necessarily that they did it better.
And I think this is just a personal thing of mine. A lot of people disagree with this, but I think it's important to proclaim like what you want to go after. Don't be necessarily like super silent about it. Like don't throw it in.
Fuck, you just cut off. Yeah, I'm gonna wait here for like 20 more seconds. I love
That'll
look
only
on his
help you,
face.
and I think that's why it's important to talk about it. Yeah, but like I think it's super important is to like, when you proclaim something, you focus on it more, and as you conversate about it, you talk about it more, and you think about it more. And I think that helps you get your brain more oriented on that, focused on that, so you see more opportunities that will help you because you're looking for that. And so like I really do think a lot of the people that achieve massive success, their life really did revolve around that one singular thing. And like
The
obviously you don't
obsession.
have to do
It's
that.
obviously obsession.
Yeah, it's like you don't necessarily have to do that 100%, but I think it really helps.
No, it ties into learning too. We can talk about this some other episode, but like learning, right, is so interrelated, because like the way your mind learns is that, like the more stuff you put in your subconscious, the more you're gonna think about it. Like the reason why like you take tests and you remember certain things you don't is because certain information, it's been embedded into your unconscious. And so when you take a test and you look at a question, it just bubbles up, right? So the more you do something, the more you think about something, the more it's going to bubble up, and the easier time you're going to have doing it. So dude, I actually have a really good analogy. So basically like yeah, so like there's this saying, like if you jump off a cliff, you have no choice but to fall. So like I think this is perfect for this, right? Like, so just jump off the fucking cliff, guys. I mean, like obviously not literally, but
Yeah.
like putting yourself out there and just taking that action. Take that fucking action.
Take action.
Because if you're not fucking doing anything, you're falling in life. Like
Yeah, like if you're not building something, like building yourself up, like building someone else up, building something to help other people, like you're wasting your time. Like build things for people.
Especially for business, right? Like if you're afraid to start a business, just fucking jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
Invest like a few thousand $1,000 to get it started, to get it started. And like you have no choice at that point to work hard and like make sure your business actually does well. Because like you don't want to lose a couple $1,000. Like you definitely don't. So you're gonna work hard on that. So put yourself in a situation where like, it's like calculated risk, but like you have to do something. So
yeah, it's like you'll work better when your back's against the wall.
Exactly. Dude, next time me and Andrew hang out, I should make him make him approach a girl for sure.
Dude, that'd be so fun. That'd be hype.
record it, post on YouTube.
New channel, new
New
series.
channel. Oh my god, did I not mention the YouTube in the beginning? I did not. Okay, yeah. So
Oh yeah.
we have a YouTube channel. Make sure to check us out there. It's on a Red Circle homepage. And yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. Yeah, so just like I said in the beginning, your life is a manifestation of your self-perception. So, you know, if you want like, oh my gosh, actually, yeah. So if you view yourself as lazy, like you're not gonna work as hard. So make sure you view yourself as someone hardworking and capable, and you're gonna work hard and you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
succeed in life. So do that. Also, make sure to give us a review on iTunes. You know, some of you loved it, and check us out on all the other major podcasting podcasting platforms. And see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.